No one noticed the little alien girl at first. She was quiet, thin, always standing at the back of the food line. On a starving space colony where every bite mattered, people fought, argued, even stole food to survive. But she did the opposite. Every day, she gave her food away. To hungry children, to old workers, to people who had already given up hope. Someone finally asked her one simple question. "Why don't you eat?" The girl looked at them, calm, gentle, almost too peaceful for someone who was starving. And she said something that made the entire room fall silent. "I've been full before. They haven't..." At first, people thought it was kindness, but days later, when the colony completely ran out of food, they discovered the terrifying truth. The little alien girl was feeding the entire colony with something far more dangerous than food, and what she was sacrificing could cost her life. But before we uncover what really happened, welcome to Cosmic Neon Aliens. And friend, if you're listening to this, maybe with a cup of tea, maybe relaxing after a long day, especially if you've crossed 50 and understand what real sacrifice means, take a moment, gently press that subscribe button. It helps these stories travel across the galaxy. And tell me something in the comments. From which part of Earth are you watching this story tonight? Outpost K-47 was a small mining colony floating near the edge of known space. The station was old, cold, and always quiet. The metal walls creaked at night as if the station itself was tired from working too hard for too many years. Hundreds of workers lived there. They mined rare minerals from nearby asteroids and sent them back to Earth. But life on the colony was not easy. Food was always limited. Every week the rations became smaller. Cargo ships from Earth often arrived late, sometimes very late. The people who lived there had learned one simple rule of survival. Eat when you can, and never waste food. But there was one person on the station who did something very strange. A small alien girl named Lyra. No one knew exactly how old she was. She looked like a child, maybe 10 years old in human years. Her skin had a soft, pale blue color, and her eyes were bright silver. She was thin, quiet, and always polite. And there was one thing everyone slowly started to notice. No one had ever seen Lyra eat. Every day the colony cafeteria opened at the same time. Workers and children stood in long lines waiting for their small metal trays of food. The meals were simple. Nutrient soup, dry bread, and sometimes a small piece of protein. People guarded their trays carefully. Some even watched others eat, afraid someone might steal their food. But Lyra never seemed worried about her meal. She would quietly take her tray, look around the room, and then give her food to someone else. Sometimes it was a hungry child who looked too weak to stand. Sometimes it was an old miner whose hands shook from exhaustion. Sometimes it was a sick worker who had spent the night in the medical bay. Lyra never kept anything for herself. At first people thought it was a one-time act of kindness, but then it happened again the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Weeks passed, then months, and still, no one ever saw Lyra eat. One afternoon, a boy named Marcus finally asked the question everyone was thinking about. Marcus was about 12 years old and always hungry. He had been watching Lyra for several days, confused by what she kept doing. When Lyra handed him her bread and soup again, he stared at her in disbelief. "Why do you keep doing that?" he asked. Lyra tilted her head slightly, curious. "Doing what?" she asked softly. Marcus lifted the tray. "Giving your food away. Don't you get hungry?" Other people nearby slowly turned their heads to listen. They wanted to hear the answer too. Lyra looked at the children sitting around the table. Most of them were thin. Some of them looked tired all the time. Then she smiled gently. It was a small smile, but warm and honest. "I've been full before," she said quietly. She pushed the tray closer to Marcus. "They haven't." Marcus did not know what to say, neither did anyone else at the table. The room slowly returned to its usual noise. Spoons tapping metal trays, people talking quietly. But something about Lyra's words stayed in their minds, because no one on Outpost K-47 could remember the last time they had truly felt full. As the weeks passed, people began noticing something else. Lyra was becoming thinner, her arms looked fragile, her steps became slower. The colony doctor even checked her once during a routine health scan. But the results made no sense. Lyra's body was weak, dangerously weak, yet somehow she was still alive, still walking, still smiling, still giving her food away every single day. And no matter who asked her why, Lyra always gave the same simple answer. "I've been full before." They haven't, but deep down, something about the little alien girl did not make sense, because no living creature could survive this long without eating. And soon, the people of Outpost K-47 were about to discover a truth far more strange than hunger itself, a secret that the quiet alien girl had been hiding from them all along. Life on Outpost K-47 had never been easy, but that winter cycle felt different. The air inside the station felt heavier, The hallways were quieter, and the cafeteria lines were longer than ever. Every morning a loud metal bell rang through the colony. It was the signal for ration time. People walked quickly toward the cafeteria. Some moved fast, afraid the food might run out before their turn came. The meals were smaller now, much smaller than before, where people once received 2 pieces of bread. Now they received 1, where there was once thick, nutrient soup. Now it was thin and watery. Everyone knew why this was happening. Supply ships from Earth were late again. The mining colony depended completely on those ships for food. Without them, survival became very difficult. Some workers tried to stay calm, and they told each other the same thing every day. The ship will arrive soon. But days passed, then more days, and the cargo ships still did not appear. Soon whispers began spreading through the colony. People started counting their remaining food supplies. The storage vaults were not as full as they once were. Even the colony leaders began to worry. But among all the stress and fear, one thing remained strangely unchanged. Lyra still gave her food away every single day. The little alien girl still stood in line like everyone else. She waited patiently for her tray, and when she received it, she quietly looked around the room. Then she gave it away. One day she gave her soup to a miner whose hands were shaking from hunger. Another day she handed her bread to a small girl who had fainted in class. And sometimes she simply placed the food on someone's table without saying anything at all. Most people had stopped trying to stop her. At first they argued with her. "You need to eat too," one worker once told her. "You can't survive without food," another person warned. But Lyra always answered calmly, "They need it more." Her voice was never angry, never defensive, just gentle and certain, still. Something about it made people uncomfortable because Lyra was growing thinner. Her arms looked fragile. Her shoulders seemed smaller every week, and yet she kept walking through the colony with the same quiet smile. One afternoon, the colony doctor finally decided to examine her more closely. Dr. Elena Ruiz had worked on the station for 6 years. She had treated broken bones, radiation sickness, and mining accidents. But Lyra's case was different, very different. Lyra sat quietly in the medical chair while machines scanned her body. Soft blue lights moved slowly across her thin arms and chest. The doctor studied the screen carefully. Then she frowned. The numbers did not make sense. Lyra's body showed clear signs of starvation. Her nutrient levels were dangerously low, far lower than any human could survive. Yet her heart was still beating steadily. Her brain activity was normal. She was weak, but she was still functioning. Dr. Ruiz looked at her in confusion. "Lyra," she said gently, "when was the last time you ate?" Lyra thought for a moment. Then she gave a small shrug. "I don't remember," she said softly. The doctor stared at the monitor again. If the machine was correct, Lyra should have collapsed weeks ago, but she hadn't. She was still walking around the colony every day, still giving food away, still smiling at people who were far stronger than she was. Dr. Ruiz leaned back slowly in her chair. Something about this situation felt wrong. Not dangerous, but mysterious. Because biology had rules, all living creatures needed energy to survive. Without food, the body eventually shuts down. That was simple science, but Lyra seemed to be ignoring those rules completely, and the doctor could not explain why. Meanwhile, the situation in the colony continued getting worse. Food storage levels dropped lower each day. Workers were becoming weaker. Some miners even stopped going to work because they did not have the strength. People tried not to panic, but fear was growing. And in the middle of all this tension, the quiet alien girl continued doing the same thing she had always done, giving away the little food she received, as if hunger did not affect her at all, as if she was not afraid of starvation. But soon, the colony was going to face a crisis far greater than anyone expected, because the next supply report from Earth would bring terrible news. And when that news arrived, Outpost K-47 would learn just how close they truly were to running out of food forever. And when that moment came, the strange secret of the girl who never ate would finally begin to reveal itself. The mystery of Lyra did not leave Dr. Elena Ruiz's mind easily. For several nights, she sat in the quiet medical office, staring at the glowing screens of colony records. Something about the little alien girl simply did not follow the normal rules of biology, and scientists hated unanswered questions. Lyra should not have been alive. Any human child who refused food for this long would have collapsed long ago, yet Lyra still walked the halls of Outpost K-47 every day, calm, patient, and strangely peaceful. So the doctor decided to search the colony database. She opened the resident files of everyone living on the station. Hundreds of names appeared on the screen. Miners, engineers, mechanics, families, children. But when she typed Lyra into the search bar, nothing appeared. No birth record, no arrival log, no citizenship file. It was as if the girl did not exist. Dr. Ruiz frowned. Every person who arrived at the colony had to be registered. Even visiting cargo pilots had files in the system, but Lyra had nothing. The doctor leaned back in her chair and rubbed her eyes. That meant only one thing. Lyra must have arrived before the current administration took control of the station. The colony had changed leadership several years ago after a major accident in the mines. Some of the older records had been moved into deep storage archives. Dr. Ruiz opened those files next. Dusty digital folders filled the screen. Old maintenance reports, mining statistics, security records. Most of them were boring. But then one file caught her attention. Security incident report. 6 years ago, Dr. Ruiz opened it. The report described a strange event that happened outside the colony walls during a meteor storm. A small, unidentified object had crashed on the icy surface of the nearby asteroid field. Security drones were sent to investigate. At first they believed it was debris from a destroyed ship. But when the drones arrived, they found something unexpected. A small escape pod. The pod was heavily damaged. Its outer shell burned and cracked from the crash. Most of its systems were completely destroyed, but one part of the pod had survived. The life support chamber inside that chamber, there was a child. Dr. Ruiz read the report more carefully. The child was described as small, weak, and clearly not human. Her skin had a pale blue color. Her eyes were silver. The rescue team had brought the child back to the colony immediately. At the time, no one knew what to do with her. There were no records of any alien ships in the area, no signals, no distress calls, nothing. The child had simply appeared, alone. Floating through space in a damaged pod, Dr. Ruiz slowly whispered the name, Lyra. The security report continued, because the child was so young, and no one knew where she came from. The colony decided to raise her together. Different workers took turns caring for her. She grew up among the miners and engineers of Outpost K-47, quiet, curious. Always watching the stars outside the station windows, Dr. Ruiz scrolled further down the file. One final note had been written by the original colony commander. It read, "The child appears peaceful and cooperative. Her species is unknown. Her biology is unusual. Further study recommended." But the report ended there. No further study had ever happened. The colony had simply accepted Lyra as one of their own. Dr. Ruiz leaned back slowly, thinking that explained where Lyra came from, but it did not explain how she was still alive. The doctor reopened the medical scan results from earlier that day. Lyra's body was starving. That part was clear. Yet something inside her cells looked strange. Her biological structure was different from human DNA. Small energy patterns moved inside her bloodstream like faint glowing signals. Dr. Ruiz did not understand what they meant, but she had a feeling they were important. Very important. She closed the files and looked out the medical bay window at the endless black of space somewhere out there. Lyra had once had a home, a family, a planet, but now she was alone. A quiet orphan living among humans on a dying mining colony, still giving away her food, still smiling, still repeating the same mysterious words. "I've been full before. They haven't." Dr. Ruiz felt a strange chill run through her mind, because the more she learned about the girl, the more she began to suspect something impossible, something that would soon change everything the colony believed about survival, and when the truth finally revealed itself, the people of Outpost K-47 would realize that the quiet alien orphan had been hiding a secret far more powerful than anyone ever imagined, a secret that might soon become the colony's only hope of survival. The announcement came early in the morning. A cold, mechanical voice echoed through every hallway of Outpost K-47. "Attention residents, emergency ration update. Food reserves have reached critical levels." People froze where they stood. Miners stopped walking toward the elevators. Children paused in the corridors. Workers slowly turned toward the ceiling speakers. The voice continued, calm but heavy with bad news. "Current food supply will last less than 48 hours. For a moment, the entire station fell silent. Everyone had feared this day would come, but hearing the words spoken out loud made the danger real, very real. Inside the cafeteria, the lines were longer than ever. People stood quietly holding empty trays. No one complained this time, because everyone understood something terrible. There simply was not enough food left for everyone. The ration servers worked slowly behind the counter, carefully measuring each portion. The soup was thinner than ever. The bread pieces were half the normal size. Some trays barely held enough to feed a child. But even in that moment of fear and hunger, something familiar happened again. Lyra stepped out of the line with her tray. She looked around the room the same way she always did. Her silver eyes moved across the tired faces, the hungry children, the exhausted workers. Then she quietly walked toward a young boy sitting alone at a table. The boy looked weak. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to lift his spoon without saying anything. Lyra placed her tray in front of him. The boy stared at her in confusion. "But this is yours," he said softly. Lyra shook her head. "You should eat," she replied gently. The boy hesitated, but hunger quickly won the argument. He began eating slowly. Across the room, several workers watched the moment in silence. One of them whispered quietly to another, "She hasn't eaten for weeks." Another worker frowned. "How is she even standing?" No one had an answer. Later that day, the colony leaders called an emergency meeting. The room was small and filled with worried faces. Dr. Ruiz was there. The station commander was there. Several mining supervisors were there too. A large screen showed the latest communication from Earth. The message was not good. A cargo ship carrying food supplies had been damaged during a solar storm. Repairs had delayed its journey. The ship would arrive. But not for 3 more days, 3 days. The commander placed his hands on the table. "We don't have 3 days," he said quietly. Everyone in the room knew he was right. The remaining food might last 48 hours, maybe less. The meeting ended without a solution. All they could do now was wait and hope people stayed calm. But hunger has a way of changing people. By evening, the colony felt different. Hallways were quieter, voices were sharper. A few small arguments had already started in the cafeteria. Security officers had to separate 2 miners who were fighting over a piece of bread. Fear was spreading faster than anyone expected. Meanwhile, Lyra walked quietly through the station like she always did. She passed the medical bay. She passed the sleeping quarters. She passed the viewing window where stars shined endlessly outside. But this time, something was different. Her steps were slower than before. She looked weaker, far weaker than anyone had ever seen her. Yet her eyes still held that same calm kindness. That night the lights in the colony dimmed to power-saving mode. Most people stayed in their rooms, trying to sleep through the hunger, but Lyra did not go to bed. Instead, she quietly walked toward the airlock corridor. The long metal hallway was empty. Only the faint sound of machines humming in the walls could be heard. She stopped in front of the outer door and looked through the thick glass window. Beyond it, the frozen surface of the asteroid stretched into darkness. A cold storm of space dust moved slowly across the rocky ground. Lyra placed a small hand against the glass. For a moment she stood there silently. Then she whispered something very softly, almost as if she was speaking to the stars themselves. "I'm sorry, but they need help." Moments later, the outer airlock door slowly opened. Cold, white light from outside filled the hallway. And without telling anyone, without asking for help, the little alien girl quietly stepped out into the frozen darkness beyond the colony walls. No one noticed she was gone. Not yet. But before the night was over, several workers would follow the faint footprints she left in the snow, and what they would discover outside the station would reveal the shocking truth behind the girl who never ate, a truth that no human on Outpost K-47 had ever imagined possible. And once that secret was seen, nothing about the quiet alien orphan would ever seem ordinary again. The storm outside Outpost K-47 was quiet, but deadly. Fine white dust moved slowly across the frozen surface of the asteroid, carried by weak gravity winds that whispered across the empty rocks. Most people inside the colony never went outside unless they had to. But that night, Lyra had walked out alone. Hours passed before anyone noticed she was missing. It was Marcus who realized first. The boy had grown used to seeing the quiet alien girl every evening near the cafeteria door. She often stood there watching the stars through the large viewing window. But tonight, the window was empty. Marcus looked around the hallways. He checked the cafeteria, the sleeping quarters, even the medical bay. No Lyra. A strange feeling of worry filled his chest. He ran to Dr. Ruiz. "I can't find Lyra anywhere," he said quickly. The doctor looked up from her medical screen, confused. "What do you mean?" she asked. "She's not in the station," Marcus said, breathing fast. Dr. Ruiz stood up immediately. Something inside her mind suddenly felt very wrong. Within minutes, security cameras across the colony were being checked, and then they saw it. One quiet recording from the airlock corridor, Lyra, walking slowly toward the outer door. Alone? The commander of the station stared at the screen in shock. "She went outside?" he said. "That's impossible. She wouldn't survive the cold." A small search team prepared immediately. Dr. Ruiz insisted on going with them. Marcus followed too, refusing to stay behind. The airlock door opened with a heavy mechanical sound. Cold white light flooded into the chamber as the team stepped outside in their protective suits. The ground was covered in pale frost and drifting dust. For a moment, everything looked empty. Then one of the workers pointed ahead. "There," he said quietly. Small footprints stretched across the frozen ground. Tiny steps, clearly not made by adult boots, Lyra's footsteps. The group followed the trail carefully through the storm. The path moved across the rocky surface, slowly, gently. as if the girl had been walking without fear. After several minutes, Marcus suddenly stopped walking. "What is that?" he whispered, far ahead in the darkness. Something was glowing. A soft blue light shimmered against the snow. Dr. Ruiz felt her heart begin to race. They walked closer, step by step, until the glowing light finally revealed its source. Lyra, the little alien girl, was kneeling in the snow. Her body looked weaker than ever, her shoulders thin, her breathing slow, but her skin was glowing with a faint blue light. Soft energy waves moved across her arms like ripples of light, and something unbelievable was happening around her. Small crystal shapes were forming in the snow, dozens of them. They looked like tiny pieces of ice, but brighter, smoother, almost like polished glass. One of the workers picked one up carefully. His scanner beeped immediately. "Nutrient mass detected," the machine reported. The man stared at the crystal in disbelief. "Food," he whispered. Dr. Ruiz slowly stepped forward, unable to look away from what she was seeing. Lyra was creating food, but not with machines, not with technology. Her own body was producing the energy. Her glowing skin pulsed gently with each breath, and every pulse created another small nutrient crystal in the snow. The doctor suddenly understood her strange biology, the energy patterns in her cells. It all made sense now. Lyra's species had an ability unlike anything humans had ever seen. They could transform their own life energy into nutrients, food, real food. Dr. Ruiz felt a cold fear spread through her chest. Because she also understood something else, this power was not free. Every crystal forming in the snow was draining Lyra's body, slowly, dangerously. The girl looked up as the search team approached. Her silver eyes were tired, but still gentle. "You shouldn't be out here," Dr. Ruiz said urgently. Lyra smiled weakly. "They need food," she whispered. Marcus stepped closer, his voice shaking. "You're hurting yourself," he said. Lyra looked at the glowing crystals around her. Then she looked back at the colony in the distance, lights shining softly against the darkness of space. So many hungry people inside those walls. Her quiet voice drifted through the cold air. "I've been full before," she said softly. "They haven't." The workers stood there in stunned silence, because in that moment they finally understood the truth. The quiet alien orphan who never ate had been feeding them all along, and every meal she created was costing her something far more precious than food, her own life. But what the colony would do with this terrible discovery would soon become the most important decision they had ever faced. For a long moment, no one spoke. The cold surface of the asteroid was quiet, except for the soft hum of the workers' suits in front of them. Lyra was still kneeling in the snow, her small body glowing faintly blue as more tiny nutrient crystals slowly formed around her, each one shining softly against the white frost like pieces of frozen light. Marcus looked at the crystals scattered across the ground. There were dozens, maybe more, enough to feed many people inside the colony. But the boy was not looking at the food. He was looking at Lyra. Her breathing had become slow. Her shoulders looked weaker than before, and her glow, the strange blue light that surrounded her, was fading. Dr. Ruiz rushed forward immediately. "That's enough," she said firmly. "You have to stop." Lyra lifted her head slightly. Her silver eyes were calm, almost peaceful. "But they are hungry," she whispered softly. The doctor knelt beside her and gently held her shoulders. "Lyra, listen to me," she said. "This is hurting you. Your body can't keep doing this." The scanner on Dr. Ruiz's wrist began beeping rapidly. Warning lights flashed across the small screen. Lyra's energy levels were dangerously low, much lower than before. If she continued, she might collapse, or worse. Marcus stepped closer, his voice trembling with emotion. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "We can find another way." But Lyra slowly shook her head. "There is no other way," she replied gently. Behind them, the other workers stood silently. Some of them had already picked up the glowing crystals from the snow. The scanners confirmed what they already suspected. Each crystal contained a full nutrient meal, enough energy to feed a human adult for hours. And there were dozens of them lying there, created by the small alien girl kneeling in the cold. One of the miners finally spoke, his voice heavy with guilt. "All this time, she's been feeding us." Another worker lowered his head slowly. "And we never even noticed." Dr. Ruiz looked back at Lyra. Her mind was racing with questions. "Lyra, why didn't you tell anyone?" she asked softly. The girl thought for a moment. Then she gave the same quiet smile she had always given in the cafeteria. "Because they would worry," she said. "And they would stop me." The doctor felt a painful knot tighten in her chest. Because Lyra was right. If the colony had known about this ability earlier, they never would have allowed her to use it. No one would let a child sacrifice herself to feed others. Marcus looked at the glowing crystals again, then back at Lyra. But you're starving, he said quietly. Lyra's eyes moved slowly toward the distant colony lights glowing across the dark surface of the asteroid. Hundreds of people were inside those walls, hungry, tired, afraid. Her voice was barely louder than the whispering wind. I've been full before, she said softly. They haven't. The words hung in the cold air like a silent promise. The workers felt something shift inside their hearts. For weeks, they had been thinking only about survival, about rations, food, and fear. But this small alien child had been thinking about something very different. She had been thinking about everyone else. The colony commander slowly stepped forward. He removed his helmet visor so Lyra could see his face clearly. His expression was serious, but filled with deep respect. Lyra, he said gently, you don't have to save us. For the first time, the girl looked surprised. The commander continued, we will survive together, or not at all. The other workers nodded quietly. None of them wanted the colony's survival to come from the suffering of a child. Dr. Ruiz carefully helped Lyra stand up. Her legs trembled slightly, but she managed to stay upright. The glowing crystals remained scattered across the snow, enough to keep people alive for now. But everyone knew something had changed tonight. The people of Outpost. K-47 finally understood the truth about the quiet alien orphan. Lyra was not weak. She was one of the strongest beings any of them had ever known, not because of her strange ability, but because of her heart. And when the rescue ship from Earth finally arrived, the galaxy would soon hear the story of the girl who gave everything she had, simply because others were hungry. But what happened next would turn Lyra's quiet act of kindness into a legend that would travel far beyond this lonely mining colony in space. The glowing crystals were gathered carefully from the frozen ground. No one treated them like ordinary food anymore. The workers carried them gently, almost respectfully, as if they were holding something sacred, because now everyone understood where the food had come from Lyra, from her strength, and from her sacrifice. The search team returned to the colony slowly. Marcus walked beside the small alien girl the entire way. He stayed close in case she stumbled, but Lyra kept walking, quiet and calm like always, even though her steps were weak. Inside the station, the news spread quickly. Faster than any announcement system could carry it, workers whispered the story in the corridors. Miners told it to their friends in the sleeping quarters. Children repeated it in the cafeteria. The alien girl made the food. At first, some people didn't believe it, but when the nutrient crystals were placed on the medical scanners, the machines confirmed everything. Each crystal contained a full energy meal, enough to keep people alive until help arrived. The colony commander ordered the food to be shared equally. No fighting, no hoarding. Everyone would receive a small portion, just enough to survive. But this time the cafeteria felt different. People no longer rushed to the front of the line. Instead, they waited quietly. Many of them kept glancing toward the medical bay, because that was where Lyra was resting. Dr. Ruiz had placed the girl in a recovery bed and connected several monitoring machines. Lyra's energy levels were still dangerously low, but she was alive. Sleeping peacefully under the soft medical lights, Marcus sat beside the bed, refusing to leave. Every few minutes he looked at the screen that showed her heartbeat. He didn't understand much about alien biology. But he understood something else. Lyra had almost given her life to help everyone, and he didn't want her to wake up alone. Outside the medical bay window, the endless darkness of space stretched across the sky. Stars glittered like distant fires, somewhere far away. A rescue ship was traveling toward them. The damaged cargo vessel had finally finished its repairs, and was now racing toward Outpost K-47. But the journey would still take several hours. Inside the colony, people waited, but this time the waiting felt different. The fear that had filled the station earlier was gone, replaced by something new, gratitude. The workers understood something they had forgotten during their hunger and worry. Survival was not just about food, it was about caring for each other, and the one who reminded them of that truth was a quiet alien child who had almost starved herself to help strangers. Hours later, a bright signal appeared on the colony radar. The rescue ship had arrived. Cheers echoed through the station corridors. The docking bay doors opened slowly as the large cargo ship connected to the colony port. Medical teams rushed inside with supplies, equipment, and fresh food containers. When the rescue captain heard the story of Lyra, he was silent for a long moment. Then he asked to see her. Inside the medical bay, the captain stood quietly beside the bed, looking at the small alien girl resting under the soft lights. "This child saved your colony," he said quietly. The commander nodded slowly. "Yes," he replied. "She did." Not long after that. Lyra slowly opened her eyes. Marcus was the first person she saw. He smiled immediately, relief flooding his face. "You did it," he said softly. Lyra blinked in confusion. "Did what?" she asked weakly. Marcus pointed toward the window where the rescue ship could now be seen through the station glass. "You saved everyone," he said. Lyra looked at the ship for a moment, then gave a small, tired smile. I just helped, she said quietly. But the people of Outpost K-47 knew the truth. What Lyra had done was far more than help. Her story spread quickly after that, first across nearby colonies, then across human space. Pilots told the story in docking stations. Miners repeated it during long asteroid shifts. Teachers told it to children learning about life beyond Earth. The story of the alien orphan who fed an entire colony with her own strength. And wherever the story was told, one sentence was always remembered the most. The quiet words Lyra had spoken again and again, words that had become a symbol of kindness across the galaxy. I've been full before. They haven't. And long after the hunger crisis of Outpost K-47 had ended, the little alien girl who never ate was remembered as one of the greatest heroes the stars had ever known.